let's go over to the Khashoggi affair. This is a guy who was murdered in Saudi Arabia. Now, I talked about how I feel about the way Trump handled it. I felt like he should have been more hypocritical, that ultimately we're not going to blow up a relation with the Saudis. But yeah, you smack them around a little bit when they butcher somebody, even if he's not a good guy. And Khashoggi, I don't think was a good guy. I think he was backing the Muslim Brotherhood, and he was using his post at the Washington Post to do that. It was a political post, not really a journalistic post, and the Post was letting him do that. But still, and I said, Trump should have been a little bit more hypocritical. He should have virtue signaled a little bit more. He should have squeezed some concessions out of Saudi Arabia. And so now the Congress is angry at him. Now you have to remember, so the Congress, let's get to the story first. The Congress went in for a briefing, and the head of the CIA was not there to give him a briefing. And there's this question. Trump and his people are saying the CIA has not definitively said that the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia was guilty. CIA people have leaked to the press that they do say this. And of course, it's very hard to imagine a murder like this taking place without the Crown Prince's knowledge. So I think that, it's kind of hard to say it. So anyway, Lindsey Graham and others, they went in and they voted to push forward a bill that would take away our support from the Saudis in the civil war in Yemen. Okay. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. And Lindsey Graham went in, and Lindsey Graham is a very tough guy when it comes to, he's a very hawkish guy when it comes to the international scene. And he came out of this meeting and he was genuinely ticked off because Nina Haspel from the CIA wasn't there, Gina Haspel. And this is what he said.
I am not going to be denied the ability to be briefed by the CIA that we have oversight of about whether or not their assessment supports my belief that this could not have happened without MBS knowing. And if the briefing reinforces the conclusion that I already have tentatively formed, then there will be no more business as usual with Saudi Arabia.
You're talking about the spending bill being what you would.
I'm talking about any key vote. Anything that you need me for to get out of town, I ain't doing it until we hear from the CIA.
Okay, so I understand what Lindsey Graham is saying, but you have to remember this, okay? The Senate is not in charge of foreign policy. The president is the leader on foreign policy. It is the president who is trying to negotiate, and the president's men who are trying to negotiate their way out of this war in Yemen. Let's just talk about this war in Yemen for a minute. It's a civil war, and it's vicious, and it is a human rights disaster, and it is just tearing the country apart. And you got to remember, people live in these countries. They're not just the government. They're the people who live in these countries, and people are being slaughtered, and kids are starving, and it's awful. The New York Times, a former newspaper, repeatedly refers to this as Saudi Arabia's war. Repeatedly, they do it on the captions of their pictures. They do it on little information, inserts that they put in their stories. They do it on videos. Saudi Arabia, how Saudi Arabia is running this war. This is Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. This is a proxy war in Yemen, and it is between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And a lot of the people who are trying to undermine our relationship with Saudi Arabia because of this Khashoggi thing are people who are trying to restore Barack Obama's lunatic policy of supporting Iran, the worst country on earth, one of the worst terrorist sponsors on earth. Now, that's not what Lindsey Graham is doing. What Lindsey Graham is doing is joining up with those people temporarily to send a little zets to the president to say, hey, you got to be a little tougher on these people. And that's okay. That's good politics. But remember, it's the president who's desperately trying to get to this peace. And here's what Pompeo said about the bill that they were pushing forward in the Senate.
We are on the cusp of allowing the U.S. envoy Martin Griffiths to, in December, gather the parties together and hopefully get a ceasefire in Yemen, something that we have diplomatically been striving for months, and we think we're right on the cusp of that. And so it is the view of the administration, Secretary Mattis and myself, that passing a resolution at this point undermines that. It would encourage the Houthis, it would encourage the Iranians, it would undermine the fragile agreement for everyone to go to Sweden and have this discussion.
So it's all lots of fun for the Senate to virtue signal and say, and I said Trump should have been a little bit harsher, a lot harsher in his rhetoric against the Crown Prince. He should have, he should have posed. He should have said, no, we can't allow this and all this. And he did say this. He did release a statement condemning it. But, when he talks, he's such a blunderbuss that he just goes like, boom, we're going to keep our relationship. We need the money. We need the allies and all this stuff. But what they're really talking about is negotiating a peace which would not come about if America were not backing the Saudi Arabian side in this civil war. When he was talking about the Houthis, that's the Iranian side in the civil war. They're trying to broker this peace to save a lot of lives. So all the stuff about Khashoggi, is well and good. And yes, we should definitely stand up for American values at all times and say the right words. But they're talking about a lot of dead people, a lot of dead kids, a lot of dead women who are just being slaughtered, dead civilians who are being slaughtered in the Civil War, and we're not going to hold that up to avenge Khashoggi. And it's ridiculous. And for the New York Times, shame on them, really. For the New York Times to call this Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen is just a plain lie. It is a plain lie. And if they covered it honestly, at least we would be able to see the complexities that Trump and Pompeo and Mattis are dealing with that make it a little difficult to do the kind of virtue signaling that the people in Congress who are not responsible for it don't have, they get to do that. But Trump and his people cannot do it. They have to deal on the ground.